Damn, that price is crazy. Did the sellers accidentally add a few zeros? Are they merely looking for attention, or is something more nefarious going on? Let's look at questionable deals on eBay. First up is Crow number 1, a legitimate Copper Age key. And look at that grade, a 9.8. Unlike other keys from this era, Crow 1 is tough to find in that grade. The list price is $36,000. The description of the book is good without too much hyperbole. The CGC data is a bit old though. There are now 70 Blue Label copies as of this recording, which tells you a secret. This book has been sitting for quite a while. Let's have a reality check on price. According to GP Analysis, the last 9.8 sale was $6,450 and the all-time highest sale was $14,400 at the height of the COVID-19 bubble. Well, Keston, maybe it's hard to find a 9.8 if you want to find it right now. It turns out that there are other copies on eBay at a 9.8 right now selling for a fraction of the price. Hey, to all you sellers out there, you can list a book for whatever you want. Note, what you hear is my opinion on prices, which is subjective. For y'all out in the audience, if you see one of these books and you like it, you want to spend $1 million on that German edition, go for it. I am not going to tell you how to spend your money. I'm just telling you, personally, I ain't going there. Alright, at least Crow number 1 was on the fringes of reality, unlike this next book. I was messing around on eBay and saw this book, and it's actually the one that inspired this video. I've been a fan of Shogun Warrior since I was a kid. Here's a toy I had, and look at this. Cha-ching! I've got Shogun number 1. Now, I've never considered this book to be valuable, but hey, what do I know? Maybe it's time to catch my gravy train. Perhaps the item description would provide some additional insight. Oh my goodness, it's extremely rare. It's out of print. It will be sold. Buy it fast before it's gone. Oh man, what am I doing just having one copy? I need to get this one too. Then I realized that the book I'm seeing on the screen looks a little bit different than mine. All right, look in that upper left-hand corner. I'm going to try to show you this. You see that price? It says still 35 cents. This is the typical copy. The one on screen looks different. In fact, it's the Whitman multi-pack variant. Let's dig in a little more. How about the grade? Well, the book is not slabbed. In fact, the seller doesn't even give a grade. Perhaps he assumes that Shogun 1 is so valuable unto itself that somebody is going to pay that list price. Let's do our reality check. The standard Shogun Warriors at a CGC 9.8 has been selling for about $130. Well, dang it. I thought this book was going to buy me a new car, and shoot, my 5.0 probably wouldn't even get me new shoelaces. But remember, this is not an ordinary copy, it's the Whitman multi-pack variant. I couldn't find any sales of a 9.8 Whitman, but in other grades, the multi-pack edition went for a slight premium, slightly higher to about double the price. So I'm thinking maybe $200 to $300 for that book if it were a 9.8. And by the looks of it, I'm guessing that book ain't a 9.8. Now, if you did want to get a 9.8 Whitman and you had to get it right now, there is a copy on eBay selling for $1,000, which I think is the upper price for that kind of book. Verdict, that book is at least 3 zeros too expensive. While this eBayer did not play up the variant, the next two didn't miss the opportunity. You might have noticed that I've been blurring out the seller information. First, I'm not trying to shame the sellers, that's not my style. Second, some of my friends speculate sellers list at absurd prices to draw people into their stores. The purpose of this video is to help buyers sniff out bad deals. Always be suspicious of prices that seem out of whack and do your research. Back to the variants. Admittedly, variants, errors, foreign editions are tough to price. Sometimes a rare variant will catch the imagination of collectors, resulting in explosive prices. For example, the 35-cent price variants of certain Marvel books fetch many multiples of their non-variant counterparts. Or check out the white cover error for Venom number 1. These are exceptions rather than the rule. Most often, no one cares about an oddity. Let's take a look at this $1 million book. It's the German edition of an Amazing Fantasy 15 reprint from 1999, signed by Stan Lee. And y'all, a Stan Lee signature is not rare. There are thousands upon thousands of his signatures out there. It is true that this 1999 reprint with a Stan Lee signature, that there's only 5 out there. But does anybody care? Would you pay $200 for this book? For $1 million, I would actually go after the real McCoy. You could likely get a 9.4, a near mint copy of Amazing Fantasy number 15, which I do think would be an excellent investment for that dollar amount. In another chapter of Rare But Who Cares, we find a slightly more reasonably priced comic. This book is Little Shop of Horrors number 1. It is unusual in two respects. It has a double cover and it is the Canadian variant. We know it's the Canadian variant because it looks like this as opposed to this. For comparison, a regular run-of-the-mill 9.8 of this book sold recently for just over $100. Canadian and double covers have sold also, but not together. We've had some Canadian variants, we've had some double covers, but never have they been combined. And those books, Canadian or double cover, have sold anywhere from that $100 to $200 range. So how does one go about pricing a double cover that's a Canadian variant? That is tough. So I looked to see what the highest price ever paid for this comic book was, and it was way back in 2018. The record was set by the book you're looking at, but it wasn't anywhere near that asking price. It went for $1,853 back in 2018. So the question is, has this book gone up in value 40 times since then? The answer is no. I've gone back, looked at a bunch of different books in these grades from 2018 to now, and at best, this book has tripled. So if you use that 3x for that rare double Canadian variant, you get about $6,000. I think that's more reasonable, but if I had that kind of money, I would buy a different plant-based comic. Let's move from small potato books to a legitimate monster. Your eyes are not deceiving you, folks. This is Detective Comics number 27 from 1939, which features the first appearance of Batman. Pound for pound, Tech 27 is the second most valuable comic book in the entire hobby. This is the real McCoy, not a reproduction. Further, $2.5 million is not unheard of for this book. And just look at that grade, a CBCS 9.6. This is the single highest copy of Tech 27 from either grading company. And geez, $2.5 million might be the deal of the decade. If this were a universal copy, it would likely sell for 8 digits, making it the most expensive comic book to ever sell. But look a little bit closer, it's had some work done. Well, it's had a lot of work done. The restoration is about as extreme as it gets. In the old days of collecting, a restored copy could fetch the same as a universal copy, but those days are long, long gone. We're talking about the 70s and the 80s, folks. Today, thank God, most collectors deeply discount the restored books. One technique for pricing a restored comic book is to try to figure out what the grade was before all the restoration took place, and then value accordingly. Given the extent of restoration, I think this book was likely a 1.0 before surgery. A 1.0 would likely sell between $250,000 to $500,000 depending on eye appeal. For another comparison, a restored copy of Action 1 recently sold for over $500,000, which is the most money ever for a restored comic book, and the restoration on that book is a lot less than the Tech 27 here. Long story short, I believe that $2.5 million price is at least quintuple of what somebody would pay at auction. What's a better way of spending $2.5 million? ComicConnect recently sold a 6.5 universal copy of Tech 27 for just under $1.9 million. And with the additional $600,000, I would suggest you buy any book other than the next one. I've got to admit, this next book brought the biggest smile to my face. The hyperbole, the salesmanship, magnifique. Here's a few highlights of the listing. Mutant Milestone, one of the true gems in the hobby. The book was passed down through time, and oh my God, it has remained in mint condition. How could this possibly be the case? I can't believe an X-Men number 1 survived in that kind of condition. The seller reminds us, don't miss your chance to own this collectible, a true holy grail for any X-Men fan. But the best part is this, the book is so valuable that it currently sits in a vault. If you are so lucky to purchase this gem, the book will be hand-delivered at a bank within 10 miles of any major airport in the United States. So y'all better jump on this one. Buy your first-class ticket, get some caviar, and pop that champagne. Nothing screams luxury like X-Men number 1 from 1991. But before we do, let's have a reality check. X-Men 1 1991 holds the world record for the most copies ever sold at over 6 million. And the special edition is not substantially rarer than the 4 variant covers. Well, Keston, how about that grade in 9.8? Maybe it's conditionally rare. I don't think so. There's over 5,000 copies in a 9.8. In fact, there's over 2 dozen in a 9.9 and likely many more in 9.9 to come. Let's look at GPA analysis at that 9.8. In the last 90 days, 116 copies have sold for an average of $76. You heard that right, folks. So that person listed a single copy at a 9.8 at the same price that somebody could have bought all the over 5,000 copies at a 9.8. Instead, perhaps consider buying X-Men #1 from 1963, the real McCoy. At about $600,000, you could easily buy a 9.4 copy and you'd be most of the way to getting to a 9.6. Truthfully, folks, there's not a book that I mentioned that I would be even close to be interested in buying. However, I have spent some huge money on comic books, and there's been a few times that I almost sold my entire collection for a single book. And you can check out that video right here. If you enjoy the content, consider subscribing. And everybody, I hope to see you around real soon.